Nobody will love you and take care of you like your mother. But I regret to tell you that for a criminal mind, there is no such love, nor such care. Because when you have the murderous DNA, even your own mother can end your life, as happened to Adrianna Hutto, a little girl of only 7 years old who was drowned in the depths of the pool at her house at the hands of her own mother. According to the victim's younger brother and son of the murderer, Amanda Lewis, A.J. Hutto, a story that paralyzed the world in 2007, and that we are about to relive. On August 8th of that year, 911 received a call from a desperate mother anxiously asking for help for her little daughter, who had apparently fallen into the pool and needed immediate attention because she was not breathing.
911.
I need an ambulance.
What's wrong, ma'am?
My daughter fell in the pool and she's not breathing.
Where at, ma'am?
In Esto.
And she's not breathing? How old is she?
She's 7 years old.
All right, hang on just a second, ma'am.
A few minutes after that distressing call, the firefighters arrived at the scene and found Amanda somewhat disconsolate on the body of the girl. The emergency personnel tried to revive her by means of first aid, but this was impossible. So they made the decision to transfer her to the hospital. But this was not immediate, since they had to request a helicopter to be able to transfer the little girl to a hospital that could treat her. Once they arrived at the hospital, the emergency personnel tried again to resuscitate little Adrianna for an hour, but the efforts were useless, since nothing worked and they ended up declaring her dead. A death that so far, for everyone, seemed to be an accidental death, since nothing pointed to it being a crime. So without anything to arouse the suspicion of a crime, the police concluded that the fatal accident occurred because Adrianna leaned over the edge of the pool with the intention of touching the water, or even playing with the insects that were there, and without realizing the danger, she ended up falling into the pool. And since she could not enter voluntarily, as the ladder was stored in the garage, therefore, after falling, she would have hit her head on the bottom of the pool, and that's where she would finally end up drowning. But then, if the police did not consider the existence of a crime, how did the mother end up behind bars, accused of having murdered her own daughter? While Amanda and Adrianna were in the hospital, little AJ was taken to his grandparents' house, where he made a frightening confession that changed the course of this story. Adrianna went from being the little girl drowned in the pool at home to being the girl killed by her own mother. And all when AJ's younger brother told what happened that day to his adoptive grandfather, who, horrified by the child's confessions, decided to call the police immediately. AJ told him that his mother had brutally drowned his sister Adrianna in the swimming pool. At first, the grandfather confessed he did not believe it. He thought that the boy was confused about what had happened. Perhaps what he saw was the moment when Amanda was pulling Adrianna out of the pool. But AJ kept insisting that his mother had killed his sister and explained all of the details of how she did it. By this time, the grandfather was alarmed and together with his wife and AJ went to the local police station so that the boy could repeat what he was telling him and thus ask the authorities to investigate the case to determine how the child really died. Amanda Lewis, the victim's mother, was arrested for the crime of which she was accused, and whether or not it was true or false, the authorities were willing to find out if Adrianna's death was a murder or not. According to Amanda, she was innocent, and what happened to her daughter was an accident, and if she was guilty of anything, it was her carelessness in leaving the children in the yard unsupervised, but never of having killed her. Amanda argued and then began to relate the facts of what she said happened that day. I remember that on that August 8th, I returned home after my night shift as a nurse, and I was tired. I decided to take a nap while the children watched television. I also remember that it was a hot day, and when I woke up from my nap, the children insisted that they wanted to take a swim in the pool. But I denied them, since we were going out of the house to buy some school supplies. And while I was getting ready to leave, I allowed them both to play in the playground, not knowing the tragedy that would occur and that would end my daughter's life. Well, I remember that minutes later, AJ came into the house telling me that Adrianna was in the pool. And I didn't understand what he was trying to tell me because I thought he was telling me that Adrianna was playing very close to the water. So I told AJ to tell her to get away from the pool. And moments later, I looked out the window and saw AJ on the edge of the pool with his hand inside. I noticed that he was trying to take something out of it. And just at that moment, I reacted and ran there and found Adrianna floating with her face inside the water. So I quickly went into the pool to pull her out, but I think it was too late because she was purple and unconscious. And in my desperation to see her like that, I immediately called 911 to help my little girl. A very different version from the one told by AJ at the police station, where he told the following. Adrianna was playing with cleaning products, and that upset Mom. I remember she was so angry that she took Adrianna by the arm and put her in the pool. I remember that at that moment, my sister started screaming a lot because she was afraid of the water. And after this, the boy told the officers that his mother, in order to prevent his sister's screams from being heard, held the girl's face under the water, using her hands to keep her underwater. A statement that left Amanda as the murderer of her own daughter. But still, nothing was completely clear, as when the police advanced their interrogation of AJ, he changed his versions of the facts and gave contradictory answers. In view of these contradictions, he was asked if he had really seen everything, to which the young man answered, "No, because if I had seen it all, I'd be in trouble." Although seconds after what he said, he again claimed to have seen and to have been present at the scene all the time. A testimony that kept the officers confused, who believed that at times AJ denied having seen what he saw for fear of his mother, because he surely believed that if he told everything, his mother would get angry and kill him, just as she had done with his sister Adrianna. Not knowing who to believe, whether it was the victim's mother or her brother, the police officers decided to go deeper into the matter and investigate everything further. So they proceeded to search for evidence of the so far apparent crime. Investigations that gradually incriminated Amanda as the one responsible for Adrianna's death, as the police discovered that Adrianna was not the first daughter that Amanda had lost. During her adolescence, the young woman became pregnant and gave birth to a child named Alex, who also died in strange circumstances when he was just 1 year and 4 months old. And that time, Amanda had said she had left him in bed, and seconds later, when she returned, the baby was on the floor, not breathing. A death that also did not raise suspicions that it was a crime, since the autopsy performed on the little boy at that time indicated that the baby had suffered a seizure, and as a result had died. This alarmed the police even more, as a very similar story was repeating itself. Now with her second child, her 7-year-old daughter, with whom she always had a problematic relationship. Many of the people questioned in search of evidence agreed that the mother and daughter relationship was stormy. And in fact, when visiting Adrianna's school, they discovered that the girl was diagnosed with ADHD, Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, which caused the little one to have difficulties in school. Problems for which the mother showed very little interest. While of AJ, it was said that he was a quiet child and much easier to handle. Evidence began to come together like a jigsaw puzzle to arrive at the truth. And in fact, when the police officers went to check the family's home, they noticed that there were no toys in the place, quite strange in a house where 2 children had lived. So the officers proceeded to ask Amanda why her children had no toys. To which she responded, "The children were misbehaving, and so I kept all the toys in the garage as a form of punishment." But when they checked the garage to corroborate what Amanda had said, no toys were found, which showed that Amanda was lying and that she was a monster and a being without any feelings. What mother does not buy toys for her children? A theory of coldness supported by the doctor who attended Adrianna when she was admitted to the hospital, as she informed the police that when Amanda found out about the girl's death, she did not show any reaction as a normal mother would do, arguing that she did not look like the same person who was desperate in the 911 call. When I broke the news to Amanda, I saw no tears. I saw no emotion, and I think that when you tell a mother that her 7-year-old daughter has died, you would expect some reaction. Because a person who loves someone, or rather when a mother truly loves her children, would show emotion in one way or another, would show her pain, and more so if it is about death. But Amanda did not seem to show anything. Amanda's co-workers confessed that she always said that she wanted to kill Adrianna and that she could not stand her anymore, words that she repudiated even more after the girl scratched her car with a marker. These statements were enough that in September 2007, Amanda Lewis was arrested and charged with first-degree murder for the death of her daughter, Adrianna Hutto. And once under arrest, the authorities offered her a plea bargain, in which they asked her to plead guilty to involuntary manslaughter to avoid the cumbersome process of going to court. And if she did so, she would only be punished with 10 years in prison. But she rejected the deal and preferred to go to trial and have a polygraph test to prove that she did not kill her daughter. And if indeed the polygraph affirmed that Amanda was not lying, the authorities still believed otherwise. So, Amanda was indicted and brought to trial in February 2008, where several exhibits were presented and the trial court was able to rely on the live testimony of little AJ, who was just 7 years old at the time. When it was his turn to testify, he sat in the witness chair, but while doing so, he did not notice the presence of his mother in the place due to the crowds of people in the room. And after a while, the judge asked the child to come forward to tell his version of events under oath. And without hesitation, AJ told everything he saw that day. And in fact, he brought with him a drawing where he explained in detail everything he had witnessed the day of his sister's death. Once he had finished his explanation, the judge told him that his mother was present in the courtroom. And without being able to help it, he began to cry. Amanda also began to cry because she felt miserable listening to her son accuse her of being a murderer. And it hurt her that she was not allowed to get close to him to hug him. And although AJ seemed very sure of what he said, the jury decided not to trust 100% of his testimony. Although he was the only witness to the murder, his statement was not enough to convict Amanda. So they demanded more evidence and witnesses before making a decision. And it was then that other people gave their statements, which ended up making it clear that Amanda was undoubtedly a murderer. And among the witnesses presented by the prosecution was Amanda's own mother, Adrianna's grandmother, who confirmed that the girl was terrified of water. So it was impossible for her to have gone near the pool, even to play. Amanda's co-workers we spoke of earlier also attended court to be questioned before the judge. One by one, they recounted the outbursts of anger and hateful words that Amanda had pronounced in relation to her daughter, words that even spoke of taking the little girl's life. And as undeniable evidence, the prosecution showed a forensic medical report that evidenced that the bruises that Adrianna presented on her forehead correlated with AJ's testimony, in which he described how his mother had plunged his sister into the water, holding her face. And although all of the statements and evidence pointed to the fact that Amanda was guilty, she continued to plead her innocence, stating the following in the courtroom. I do not deny having had a conflictive relationship with Adrianna because her hyperactivity problem complicated our relationship, and it was a struggle to deal with her. But this does not mean that I did not love her. Adrianna was always looking for attention from others. She was a happy child. She was very extroverted and hyperactive, and without a doubt she resembled me because she was acting like me. She was stubborn like me. She was as my walking shadow, and losing her hurts like you have no idea. And when they say I wanted to kill her, that's a meaningless phrase that all of us parents say when our children make us angry with their antics. So it doesn't mean that I really wanted to kill her. It hurts me to hear how my son accuses me of killing his sister. But I don't blame him. I know he is being manipulated by my stepfather, who has never loved me and is using my own son and these circumstances to incriminate me. So I repeat again that I am innocent. Innocent or guilty. We will find out later when we learn the decision made by the judge and jury. But first, let's take a tour through the life of Amanda Lewis before she murdered, to try and find a clue that tells us why she became a murderer. Despite the many efforts of our team of investigators to find all the details of Amanda's past life, we were not able to gather much about it, so precise data regarding her childhood is unknown. The only thing we do know is that she was born in the early 80s and that her mother's name was Brenda. And within the few details we managed to collect, we determined that she spent her childhood in the state of Alabama. And her behavior changed when Brenda, her mother, married Charles Burns, the man who Amanda claimed had manipulated her son to blame her for the crime, because she never loved her, the same man who made the complaint after AJ told him what his mother did with his sister. But let's get back to Amanda's past. According to one of her teachers we managed to locate, Amanda was restless, talkative, and sometimes problematic, because she often had trouble following the rules. Perhaps these personality traits and her rebelliousness led her to become a mother at a very young age, because when she was just 15 years old, she became pregnant with her first baby, whom she baptized Alex, and who died when he was just a year and 4 months old. A very sudden death, because according to Amanda herself, the day her baby died, the little one was taking a nap, and while he was sleeping, she took the opportunity to take a bath. When she left the bathroom, she realized that the baby was not breathing. In fact, the baby was already dead, and according to the autopsy, the little one died of a seizure disorder. Let's say then that she did not kill him as she did with Adrianna. She was born a few years later after Alex's tragic death, when Amanda was still living in Alabama and in a stable relationship with a man named Hutto, from which Adrianna was born on September 16, 1999. About a year later came her younger brother Andrew Jordan Hutto, whom everyone called AJ, the little boy who years later would accuse his mother of having killed his sister. And although the children have the same surname, many sources claim that they were half-siblings of different parents, because Amanda liked to be a promiscuous woman, and all of this led her partner to separate from her. After the breakup, Amanda took her children and decided to put a great physical distance between herself and her former partner, and that is how she came to settle in the small town called Esto, northeast of Holmes County in the state of Florida, where the heinous murder occurred. Amanda had apparently adapted wonderfully to this town, where she intended to rebuild her life and move forward with her 2 children. And in search of self-improvement, Amanda trained as a nurse's aide and quickly got a job at a nursing and rehab center for the elderly, a job with which she could comfortably support her little ones. It seemed that everything was going perfectly in this small town, just as she had planned. She had a stable job and a simple house in which to live with her 2 children in a quiet and safe place. Although the family coexistence was not as harmonious and quiet as the town was, and all because of Adrianna's fault, according to Amanda, because she was quite restless, rebellious, and disobedient, and because of the ADHD disorder that we talked about earlier that Adrianna suffered from. A very frequent disorder in the neurodevelopment of children, which generates several problems, such as difficulty in maintaining attention, impulsivity, and a high degree of hyperactivity that makes children never sit still, to the point of seeming disobedient, something that Amanda had to deal with as Adrianna's mother. Medication helped soften the symptoms of this disorder, but according to Amanda, it was still difficult to cope with Adrianna's explosive behavior. Apart from all the problems Adrianna caused at home, she also had to put up with the problem she caused at school, where the teachers were aware of Adrianna's behavior. But that did not exempt Amanda from being summoned on some occasions because her daughter had fought with other classmates, or because she had expressed herself with bad words, or had caused some kind of problem, or simply because Adrianna occasionally peed in her pants. But despite these stumbles, her teacher said that her behavior was improving, that she was an intelligent child who loved to read, and that all she needed was patience. And that although she was sometimes difficult to handle, she was a good child. On many occasions, Amanda, fed up with Adrianna's behavior, subjected her to severe punishments such as the so-called time out, which consisted of removing the little offender from the place where the misbehavior took place and taking her to a secluded place and leaving her there. But many times this punishment did not work and ended up altering Adrianna's behavior. So Amanda, fed up with her daughter's behavior, proceeded to use physical violence in order to make her behave. So we can say that in a moment of anger, Amanda could have killed her daughter unintentionally. Maybe she wanted to scare her into thinking she would drown her if she did not obey, or if she did not behave well. And maybe everything got out of control and she ended up truly killing her. But what the heck was such a big pool doing in Amanda's backyard if she had two small children, and if Adrianna was supposedly afraid of water? Well, this has an explanation. Amanda, in her mission to rebuild her life, had found a new romantic partner, a young man named Alan Carley, who, like her, came from Alabama, and who had also recently separated from his partner. Coincidentally, they both had two children, though Alan had older children, which were Alan Jr., 13, and Amber, 11, who often visited their father and spent time with him and his new family, consisting of Amanda and her two little ones. And it was just during one of those visits that Alan decided to buy a swimming pool, since his children would visit them in the summer. A summer that ended up turning into a nightmare for the family, and that would ultimately end Adrianna's life. Though the pool was purchased to share moments of fun together as a family and mitigate the heat of the season, it ended up becoming a lethal weapon, despite the fact that they tried to keep the children safe. According to what Alan stated in court, "We were all excited about the pool, and I remember perfectly well that I talked to Amanda to make sure that after taking it home, we established rules for the children. And it was logical. We established that they were completely forbidden to use the pool without the presence of an adult. In fact, as it was a high enough pool for children, Amanda removed the ladder that allowed them to enter the water and locked it in the shed to eliminate the danger of the children disobeying the instructions and avoid an accident. But those rules were of no use, because more than an accident, there was a murder." And finally, who did justice believe, Amanda or AJ? Despite the fact that Amanda pleaded not guilty from beginning to end, always sticking to her version of events, explaining that when AJ told her that Adrianna was in the pool, she did not immediately check what the little girl was really doing, but instead called her partner on the phone, and a while later she looked out the window and saw AJ on the edge of the pool, trying to reach Adrianna, and the splashing of the little girl in the water. And it was then when, according to her, she went to help her daughter. But it was too late. So the defense attorney, using the mother's story, argued the following in her defense. Adrianna's death was nothing more than a tragic accident. According to the defendant's legal representative, the girl had brought her brother's toy cart to the edge of the pool, got on it, and took a tray to pick up the insects from the water. But when she leaned on the edge of the inflatable pool, it gave way, and Adrianna fell into the water, and fell without an adult nearby to help her. But according to the prosecution, things wouldn't have turned out that way if Adrianna had stood upright in the water, since the water level was not higher than the little girl's height. So AJ's version began to make sense, since the only way the girl ended up drowning was because someone pulled her under and kept her under until she became unconscious. Now let's listen to the part of AJ's testimony which is reinforced in a drawing he made of the crime scene during the psychological therapies he received after seeing how his mother murdered his sister. And right after this testimony, nothing could save Amanda from jail, because the theory or the story of the facts coincided with the explanations given by the forensic specialist before the court, when she said that through a study of the little girl, it was noticed that her face presented a large amount of bruises, and that the way they covered her face seemed to be where a hand had covered her face frontally. Testimony that increased the credibility of what AJ had said, who, after a very long interrogation for a child his age, and who had to tolerate the severe interrogation of his mother's lawyer, who tried to confuse him and make him change his version of the facts, it was so much pressure that this lawyer put on AJ that the poor child gave contradictory answers. But despite this, for the prosecution, AJ was a credible witness, and he emphasized that Adrianna was higher than the water level in the pool. And just by standing up, as she had done so many times before, she could have easily gotten her head out of the water. This nullified the defense's argument that Adrianna's terrible death was a very unhappy accident. For the prosecution, Amanda had acted maliciously in punishing the girl, and that her punishing ways had simply gone too far. And perhaps it was all the fault of the stress and helplessness she felt at not being able to discipline her daughter, so that the woman simply exploded in anger and unwillingly killed her daughter. After all of this testimony, and after 4 days of hearings, the members of the jury retired to deliberate, and in just 2 hours they had a verdict, in which Amanda Lewis was found guilty of murdering her own daughter. A month after the decision, the judge convened a sentencing hearing where Amanda was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of her daughter, plus an additional 30 years for the child abuse charge. Following this ruling, Amanda has tried several appeals, but has not been able to prove her innocence in any of them. She is still behind bars in a women's correctional facility in the United States. For his part, AJ, once the trial was over, was for a while in the care of his grandparents. But after a few months, the boy was put up for adoption. Since then, the life of the little boy has been kept private. Although recently a photo of this now man was shown in social networks, and apparently no sequel of what he lived in the past is seen. But there's no doubt that such a ruthless fact with which he had to live in his childhood can ever be erased from his mind. And as for little Adrianna, we have determined that her remains rest in the Hurricane Church Cemetery. Who knows what could have been her future if she had not been the victim of this atrocious murder? But unfortunately, there are those who do not manage to escape the clutches of crime. And little Adrianna was one of them. And so we put an end to this story. But before I say goodbye, I invite you to leave us your opinion about this case. And be sure to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you do not miss any of the amazing criminal cases we have for you. Until next time.